On this edition of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast, recapping the annual Tournament 12 in Toronto with one of the coaches and one of the players who took part. Welcome to episode 58 of Alberta Dugout Stories, the podcast. I'm Joe McFarland. Imagine being in high school, flying across the country to play at the Major League Baseball stadium in Canada, Rogers Centre, or for some of us, it's still Skydome. At any rate, since 2013, the Tournament 12 has been held there, showcasing the best talent our nation has to offer. It's a chance to learn from some of the best coaches around the country, including some Blue Jays alumni like Roberto Alomar, Lloyd Moseby, George Bell, and Jesse Barfield, among many others. But it can also be a springboard to bigger things like college baseball or even catching a few eyes and getting drafted by an MLB club. But most of all, it's a chance to grow the game. Here in Alberta, we've seen quite a few players head to the T12 over the years. This year, no less than 13 Alberta-born products took part, joined by several others not born here but training and going to school here at places like Dogs Academy and Vauxhall Academy. As well, a few Alberta-based coaches were also part of the festivities, including Alan Cox, Brock Shelgard, Shane Dawson, Mike Johnson, and Les McTavish. For McTavish, it wasn't his first rodeo, but it would be a busy couple of weeks for the Vauxhall coach, who went straight from the T12 in Toronto to Boston for the 2019 New Balance Baseball Future Stars Series International Week, where he would be manager for Team World. He's finally back home and took a few minutes to chat with us about his jet-setting ways. Les, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
My pleasure, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
First things first, how is that jet lag after all the miles you've traveled over the last few weeks?
It's I certainly don't feel any younger at times, but it's all good. It's part of the business, and I think sometimes when you know you have to do it, you're able to deal with it. It's just part of the job and part of the expectation.
So let's start off with that first trek, and it's out to Toronto. You've done T12 before, but this one was a little bit different. You have colors versus regions. So walk us through some of the challenges, maybe some of the opportunities that you faced being part of Team Green this time around.
The challenges was just trying to know your roster, but the Blue Jays did a tremendous job of setting it up for all the coaches. So we knew who was pitching. We knew what positions they were going to play. We knew when the pitching changes were going to happen. So I'll tell you, the Blue Jays did all the work on it. They did a tremendous job with it. So as a coach, our job was to manage the players, to help, to add resources, to talk to them, to answer questions, and then just deal with some of the in-game management. But as far as a lot of the decisions, sometimes you didn't even know your roster well. But I think that's what also was an appealing part and something that was a strength is you were able to get to know some kids from outside of your normal area. You got to know some kids from Quebec or from Ontario or BC or the Maritimes. So I found that exciting too. You know about players, you read about players, you know who they are, but you got to know them on more of a personal level, which I thought was great.
And one of the other things that I would take away from it is just the opportunity to maybe provide a bit of an outsider's perspective. You're not used to seeing some of these kids, and some of these kids can't really tune you out either just because they've heard you a gazillion times before.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots of players that tune me out at times, but, there isn't a lot of instruction at those events. Those events, you're just there to add as a resource. So, you got to be careful. You certainly don't want to give too many suggestions. But if a player asks you, you're certainly willing to talk to them. But they're also, you got to remember, they have all the Blue Jays alumni as well that they can offer a ton of professional insight, big league insight, all-star insight. You got Robbie Alomar, you got Dwayne Ward, you got Jesse Barfield, Lloyd Moseby. Those are the guys that you want talking to the players more than anybody as far as mechanical things or mental things or just baseball skills.
The other interesting aspect to all of this is that you have Vauxhall Academy players who are on other teams outside of Team Green. And so did you find yourself almost cheering for some of those players, even if it came at the expense of your own team?
Yeah, you do. And I'll tell you, the biggest challenge was when we were playing somebody else from another team and So let's say Max Grant's hitting for Team Green, which was our team, and we were facing Maddox Matejchuk. It's a challenge because I want Maddox to do well, but I want Max to do well for our team and for us. So it was great, though. I think that's all part and parcel, and that's what makes the experience even more memorable and certainly something that's unique.
Any personal highlights during the Toronto trek?
I don't know if there was any personal highlights. I enjoy getting to know some new kids. There's a couple kids from BC, a couple kids from Ontario that I really got to know a little bit, and a short amount of time that maybe professional prospects real soon. And so I enjoyed that part of it, to get to know some of those kids and start to put a name to a face and really get to know what makes them tick, what they're like as a teammate, some of those things. And to me, that was the highlight of it. I enjoyed that part of it, and certainly something I'll take away from it for sure.
Any pieces of advice that you found you were giving a little more often than other pieces?
No, I don't know if there was any advice that I necessarily gave, but it was different in the sense there was no 1-1 counts now either. So a year ago, you're really, really emphasizing the pitchers to attack on that first pitch, where now it's a normal baseball game. They were back at normal counts. So, it's a challenge because you don't want to offer too much. You just want to sit back and let players play and, try to offer some insight and just, maybe some adjustments defensively, or making sure we move when somebody's late, or making sure we play back with two. Whatever the adjustment may be is probably what you would spend more time with. But, we had 4 good coaches on Team Green, and so you just kind of sat back and, you chatted amongst each other. Mike Johnson and I have coached together a number of times, so it was pretty easy for the two of us to do things. And then we have Coach Fatel from Quebec and Robbie Butler from Ontario. So that's also a neat thing too. You got to know a couple new guys on the coaching standpoint, which is great.
I was going to ask you about that side as well. It's one thing to be surrounded by coaches that you know and you've worked with before from Dogs Academy or Edmonton or Badlands. It's another to have a few different faces in that dugout. And I'm wondering what's that like and what you took away from it.
Well, I think that's important. I think it's, you ask questions about their program, how they go about their business, different things that they do with their players. So I think that's a big part of the development for the coaches. And, it's like having a PD development while you're coaching the game. And, a lot of the Blue Jays alumni, you try to ask a lot of questions there, but, if we're talking to another colleague or another coach on the other side of the country that runs a similar program, I think it just becomes even more relevant and something that you can take away and learn from.
Do you find yourself starstruck at all when you go up and see some of these Blue Jays alumni, guys that you watched when you were younger?
Early on, it's the first, 5 or 6 years that I did the T12, I certainly found myself more starstruck. They're great guys. They're down to earth. They want to be there. They're not there because they have to be there. They want to be there. They want to help the players. They want to help the coaches. They want to help baseball in our country, and it's led by Robbie Alomar. And it's one of those things that, every time you go there, you try to take something away from it. You try to learn something and hopefully bring it back to your own program and your own players.
Speaking of your own players, you also had 5 who took part in that last game as well. What was that like? And walk us through some of the athletic achievements that really stuck out to you over the course of those few days.
Well, it was exciting. We had some players that were part of that game, and it's always exciting for your program, and I think it's a neat addition to the whole tournament, and it's something that I know our players cherished. And there's only a first. There's only a first year of Vauxhall. There's only a first T12, and hey, you were part of the first All-Star game ever at the T12. So I think that's really neat, and it's another feather in a lot of the players' caps, and hopefully they move on to bigger and better things and look back on it. And I know for all our guys, it's a great memory and certainly something that they cherish and are honored to be part of. Absolutely.
For you then hit the road again and you headed out to Boston. What was that experience like, taking part in this USA versus the world experiment?
It was good. It's my second year. Last year I was in Phoenix, part of it as well. You're in Boston, you're in the icon of baseball, and we we practiced out of college the first day and did a bunch of testing and workouts, and we played in Pawtucket, which was like a 75-year-old stadium in Rhode Island, and then finished things off at Fenway Park. It was my second year involved, so it was really neat because a lot of the coaches had been there the year prior, so you were able to, rekindle some friendships, and, you felt like you knew guys, and you felt more on my end this year. I certainly felt like I was part of things more, and it's a great experience. It was something that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
I am curious how an opportunity like that came about in the first place, going back to last year.
Well, we Vauxhall is a partner of Program 15, and their CEO, Jeremy Booth, asked if I'd be interested in coaching in the International Future Series game and International Week, and this was their third year, and I said, yeah, I'd be honored to be part of it, and that's where it started. And then Adam Mackerel was part of the game last year, pitched in Phoenix, at Camelback, the Dodgers complex. So that's how it started, and it's been a tremendous honor, and Vauxhall's a partner with P15, and certainly something that we look to grow and expand on.
Is that a challenge for you, is trying to learn all the nuances with the different styles of ball that happen, whether you've got players from Japan or Puerto Rico or Australia or the Dominican Republic? I mean, there's so many backgrounds. That is it much of a challenge at all to try to get them to kind of sing from the same baseball songbook?
It was a challenge this year for sure. We obviously had English. We had 4 players that spoke English as their first language, 2 Canadians, a player from Australia, and a player from the Bahamas. The majority of players are Spanish-speaking, and then we had the 3 Japanese players as well. So it was certainly a challenge, but I thought it was outstanding. And we had 2 or 3 of our coaches. They spoke Spanish fluently, so they helped with that. We had a Japanese translator. But I think that's what made it even more memorable. You're not only at Fenway Park and Pawtucket, but you're able to relate and coach and be part of these young lads' careers, and hopefully give them a little bit as far as an experience that they'll remember for the rest of their life.
What's it like for you to step onto that field at Fenway and kind of take it in, going, oh yeah, this isn't just your typical fan experience. I'm actually kind of here to work too.
Well, it's funny because a year ago I went to Fenway Park for 4-game series, watched the Blue Jays as a fan. And so I had somewhat of an idea of what Fenway Park was like. And I was lucky I got to go on the field for batting practice with the Jays one day. And so anyways, fast forward to this year, nothing whatsoever could give you an idea of what it's like to be on Fenway Park coaching and going to the home plate meeting and just being in the dugout, being part of it. There's so many great memories, and speak in particular with this event, there's so many great players. Like there's lots of 95-mile-an-hour fastballs, guys that can fly, run, hit. Overall it was a tremendous experience, and unfortunately we lost the first game at Fenway 7-3, and then we got walked off on. But we got walked off on with a double off the Green Monster, which is pretty cool, and scored 2 runs. We lost 5-4, but it was a great event for sure.
Did you learn anything about yourself and your coaching abilities as you go through these different experiences where you're getting the cream of the crop and being able to bring some of that back to where you work here at home?
I've talked to our players a lot about some of the players that were in Boston and in Toronto for that matter, and just how the game, the better the player, a lot of times the easier it is, the simpler they have in their approach. It's not that they, there isn't anything special, but they are special, if that makes sense. I was thoroughly impressed with how some of the best players in the country, or the best players in the world, their approach offensively is really simple. On the mound, it's really simple. And, they're blessed with great arms or blessed with speed or power or whatever it is. But how every single one of them is really hardworking, really dedicated. They do all the extra things. It doesn't come by chance. It doesn't come by luck. It usually comes back to hard work, commitment, dedication. And, obviously you need a lot of ability and talent, but it certainly doesn't come without all the other attributes.
So now you're back at home. You're able to kind of rest in those creature comforts. What's next on your to-do list as you head towards the winter months here?
Well, hopefully the snow goes away at some point here in southern Alberta. But once the snow goes away, we'll finish up with our fall schedule. We'll take a couple weeks off where we do some field work, and then we get cranking in the weight room. To me, every player, it's the time when they get into the weight room in the off season is what's going to separate them next year. So I'm looking forward to that. I know a lot of our players are tired and beat up and ready to get to the off season, but to me, that November through February is where you're going to separate yourself in your career. And I know we have a lot of players. We have a good group this year, and I'm excited about the work they're going to put in the winter. I read something the other day on Bo Bichette. He's going to take 2 weeks off, and then the hard work begins, and he's excited about getting back in the weight room and getting stronger and getting better. So.
Fantastic stuff. Well, Les, congratulations on all that you've been able to accomplish over the last little while, and thanks again for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate all your support and look forward to working together more in the future.
One of the players who took part in the T12 and played for McTavish's Team Green was Max Grant. The 5'11", 195-pound catcher turned enough heads to be selected to Team Alomar for the Prospects game, which ended the tournament. Between classes, we caught up with Grant about how things went and his journey from Fredericton, New Brunswick to Vauxhall. Max, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start off with T12, and what was that experience like for you?
It's unreal. I've gone there a couple times before, and every time it just seems like it's getting better. Like the competition, the amount of schools that are in the stands, the former MLB players that are helping coach the teams. It's just an unreal experience, and nothing really compares to it.
When you look back on the way that you performed, happy with the way things went?
Yeah, I was pretty happy with the result that I had. I felt I was going in ready as I could be. I already had a couple weeks under my belt back out here at Vauxhall, so I felt I was pretty good throughout the tournament.
Walk us through the butterflies that first time you had gone and what it was like to step foot, on a place that, is familiar to a lot of baseball fans here in Canada, which is the old Skydome.
Yeah, well, that was 3 years ago. I was younger than everybody else, but back then we had the Atlantic team, so I obviously knew a couple of buddies that were on my team, so that was good to have a couple guys show me the way and stuff of how we're supposed to do things. And obviously playing in that field really gives you goosebumps, knowing all the greats that have already played there and the players that are still playing on that field. Just to get a chance to be out there was awesome.
Was it a little different for you this time around, given that it wasn't a regional tournament at all? It was all, hey, you're based off the color of your shirt this time around?
Yeah, it was obviously different, not seeing as many familiar faces that you're used to on your own team, but I had a few guys that are on my Vauxhall team that were also on my team, so that was good. And we also had my coach out here in Vauxhall, Les McTavish, who was our coach, who had to leave early to go to a big showcase.
Now that you're able to look at this all through the rear view mirror, what did you learn about your own abilities after T12?
Well, the first time I went in there, I was pretty overwhelmed with the amount of skill that everybody had. And obviously coming from a little place like New Brunswick, it's obviously eye-opening, but I feel like I filled my shoes pretty well going through my 3 years there and finished happy with my results that I've had. Any
memories that stick out for you?
Yeah, there's lots. There's different every year. Sometimes they're with your buddies, sometimes they're on the field, but it's just an awesome place, and you get tons of memories, tons of stories from the former MLB guys, or obviously your family there watching, as I'm not, I don't get to see my family very much while I'm out here out of Vauxhall, so it's obviously good to see them.
If you look back on your time at T12, and if there was one former MLBer who stood out above everybody else and really made an impact on you, who would it be and why?
Probably Nothing towards baseball or anything, but Lloyd Moseby. He was always the funny one there, always the one lightening the mood. And, it's just baseball, he'd say, so it's just like you're playing in your backyard.
Let's take a step back, I guess. And how is it that a New Brunswick kid ends up playing ball here in Alberta?
Well, way back when I played Canada games, we were allowed to have 2 overagers, and both of them who were on my team came to Vauxhall, and that's really the start of where I heard the name Vauxhall. And then I sort of looked into it, and my New Brunswick coach, one of my New Brunswick coaches, played here when he was younger, and then he came back home, so he was still in contact with Coach Mack, and they sort of exchanged emails and stuff, and then I got to play with the older kids then, and then at T12 was the first time I sat down with Coach Mack and started planning on the Vauxhall.
And what's the experience been like?
It's unbelievable. There's so many eye-opening things out here, like the coaching you get, the dorm lifestyle you get, having the billets, the place to get out of the dorms, how everybody just helps you along. They know everybody's coming from a different place, and it's probably their first time away from home, so they sort of know how to deal with that and help you through everything. And the teachers are awesome here. They can help you whenever.
Any personal highlights for you thus far in your time here in this province?
There's a lot, especially how open it is. Back home, you got all the trees and stuff, and here you can see forever.
What do you look forward to the most when you come out here and you get to play some ball out at Vauxhall?
The talent, probably, and playing with my buddies who I live with.
Fantastic. Who do you look up to in the game of baseball or even just in life in general?
Probably for baseball-wise would be Devers for the Red Sox, because he's young and he's talented and he carries himself accordingly. And probably my brother, who's been through a lot of adversity and seems to always come through it on the positive end.
Want to give a shout out to him at all? Anything you want to say about what he's meant to you?
Oh, he means the world to me. Me and him are best friends. He plays hockey back home, and he moved away last year when I moved away. So we were closer to each other than we were to our parents, so we were pretty tight.
Fantastic stuff. Well, Max, congratulations on everything that you accomplished, and all the best in your future endeavors.
Thank you.
Thanks again to both Les and Max for joining us on the podcast this week. We want to take a moment to thank all of you for downloading and listening. Combing through the numbers again earlier this week, and September was another banner month. The podcast continues to grow leaps and bounds, and we could not do it without all of you. A tip of the cap to all of our sponsors as well: the Okotoks Dogs, Dogs Academy, the Western Canadian Baseball League, Sparrow Outfitters, and Vauxhall Academy of Baseball for their continued support. If you or your organization are interested in becoming a sponsor, particularly of the podcast, don't hesitate to drop us a line at albertadugoutstories@gmail.com. You can also check us out on all of our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Until next time, thanks again for all of your support, no matter the platform, of Alberta Dugout Stories.